welcome to this beautiful rooftop. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
You are very welcome. Before we kick off into our questions, tell me who you are and tell me what you do.
Okay, so this is going to be a long one, John, so lock in. My name's Nylander. I am a fractional CMO. I mainly work with B2B brands that like to disrupt and want to do something different. As well as that, I'm an executive coach. I work with women, people of colour, LGBTQ+, neurodiverse people, and anyone that feels like they don't belong in the corporate world. And then finally, I run my own women's network. I started it 10 years ago. I was in a relationship that wasn't really going anywhere, and I needed to find my people. So now we're a community. We're based in London. We're going to have ones in other places across the UK, and we're going international. So I'm super excited about that.
Exciting stuff. Sounds like you've got a lot going on.
Mate, I've always got a lot going on. I'm like one of these people. I love to juggle all the balls.
Like being busy.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Keeps me out of trouble.
Yeah, sometimes. Right, we're going to discuss the open web, talk about programmatic and the open web. Question one is, how is the programmatic open web advancing and what does it need to do to compete with the walled gardens?
So I'm going to take this question apart a little bit because being a marketer, I just have to be contrary. So my take on this is, like, I'm not really convinced the open web needs to do that much. I think the open web's just fine. Like, that's not the problem. The problem are the walled gardens. That's the issue that we should be talking about. I think, like, if you think about finance and lots of other industries, they don't allow such flagrant monopolies. They don't allow such control. And there's something about ad tech and technology, and I think it comes from a lack of understanding by governments, et cetera, that they're just allowed to do what they want. And I think now, finally, we're starting to see with governments taking things seriously with social media bans and stuff like that. So I think now there is a swathe of, like, the government trying to understand that technology companies that have monopolies and that control things are not really where it needs to go. And I'm hoping that translates not just about social media bans and children, but actually into the infrastructure of it. Because in my opinion, quite frankly, I think there's a lot of dodgy dealing going on. I think there's a lot of backhand money flying everywhere. And I just don't think it's fair. I think, like, it should be an open market. It should be more visible. There should be more transparency. And I think that would build trust. And I think that's what we're lacking in ad tech at the moment. I think, from my perspective, I've lost a lot of trust in the big players. And I'm actually, and it goes conversely, I've also lost a lot of trust in the big agencies as well, because now they're playing in the technology pot. They're now trying to make margin. So what's going on here? It feels like there's a lot of robbing Peter to pay Paul, if I'm honest, John.
Yeah, I can imagine. And going, slightly into how AI is impacting that.
Like don't get started on the AI, the anti-intelligence.
There you go.
Yeah.
But it's, there's a lot to chat about it with AI.
I know, we could go off on an over tangent.
We'll have a different chat for that. But it's, it's not helping the black box situation.
No, it's not. And I think, for me, one of the things that I've always, when I worked at Programmatic and when I've worked at, wherever, I've always wanted to simplify and make sure that people understand that there's no... Programmatic technology is actually very simple. We use language and acronyms and conflate things to make it complicated. Why? I don't exactly know. Is it to be able to make more money? Is it to make ourselves look clever? But there are lots of other programmatic sort of systems or automated systems that exist. So, for instance, you've got eBay for buying and eBay for selling, but you're just selling shoes or your old clothes or something like that. That's just a sort of automation, like you don't have to, use all these complicated things. And so I always start to think, like, once something becomes really, really complicated or starts moving into what one would say is a mature market, are all these technologies and these add-ons and things that we go, what are they for the benefit of the advertiser? Are they for the benefit of the consumer? Or are they just another way for people to make more margin?
Yeah. I'll move us on to the next question. Fragmentation in our industry between media, creative and performance data. It's always been a challenge for the open web how to marry these things up. How do we get better at connecting them?
Look, I think one of the things that I've always found challenging, no matter what side I've been on, because I worked at media agencies for the first pretty much 8 years of my career, and then I've been a marketer for the last 12. I don't think we have the right people in the right rooms at the right time. And what I mean by that is we now are in a situation where we have big holding groups trying to make technology when shouldn't they be media planners? Shouldn't they be doing branding? Shouldn't they be doing the best for the client? And then we've got technology companies that are wanting to create media planning tools. And it's just the convergence is massive, but also messy. And actually, why don't we just collaborate? Why don't we actually just, and I think some people do. There are some really good collaborations in our industry, but I think there needs to be more. And I think actually, like, for me, I worked with a really, really clever marketer. She probably doesn't even know who I am because she had marketers all over the globe. But when I worked at AOL, I worked with somebody called Ali Klein. She was a CMO at the time. And Ali used to say, we build it once, we use it everywhere. And so that's the way I see marketing media. I think we're moving away from what the message is. The technology or the website or the things are vehicles. But what's the message? What's the brand? That's what we should be focusing on. And then it's about using the right technology to get the message to the person that you need to do it, or using the right or creating a system of infrastructure where you've built that strategy and the message, and then you're using it everywhere. And that's the kind of the way I see the whole ecosystem. But everybody is just focused on their silo and not looking at the holistic picture. And that's why we have some really rubbish work. Like, I see some stuff in Cannes, I'm going to be honest, I'm like, rubbish. I see some brands and I'm like, what are you saying? Like, I don't know who you are. You've got a massive tagline. It's saying a lot, but it's also saying nothing at the same time, John.
In the home of creativity,
I
of all
know,
places.
yes, the Cannes Lions Festival of Creativity. I've seen a lot of things that I don't think are very creative, I'm going to be honest.
I agree. Yeah, say no more. So with all that in mind, Lou,
Yeah.
what's next? How does the programmatic open web really build these outcomes for the advertisers?
Look, I think it's tough because, as I said earlier, with the first question about the walled gardens, I as much as I say, I don't think the programmatic open web has much to be done. Unfortunately, I'm also a realist and I'm not too altruistic to know that that's going to be difficult, right? Like, you've got these huge monopolies. But for me, fundamentally, I think it comes down to, it needs to come from advertisers, it needs to come from media agencies, and then things will change, right? Advertisers, I think, sometimes don't know how much power they have, and they don't educate themselves about the technologies. They put it down to these media agencies to do it for them. I'm really seeing some advertisers or brands, one could say, that are in-housing now and creating teams within their marketing teams that are media specialists, that are programmatic specialists and stuff like that. And for me, I feel like those brands are the ones that are going to win, because the issue we have is until the advertisers start not being lazy and just giving all their money to the walled gardens and the monopolies, then that won't trickle down to everyone else. But ultimately, we need to start moving towards what I think we had before when I first joined the industry, when I was a planner buyer at Zenith Optimedia, where we looked on context and audience and what people were doing. That is marketing media planning mix. We need to go back to basics. We know the strategy, we know what we're trying to do. Technology should be the enabler, but now we're actually, the technologies, it's like it's ruling us. I was doing a panel yesterday, and a really clever lady called Scarlett Shipp, that was the CEO of Alliance, we were talking about AI, and she said, everyone talks about human in the loop, and I talk about human in the loop. She goes, we need to talk about human in command. And it's the same with the advertisers. Advertisers in command. If the advertisers are in command, everything will fall into play.
Amazing. Lou, I'm going to let you get off the rooftop before we both
Thank
melt.
you.
Thank you so much for
so much.
the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.